we're focusing on long range optics, and I want to do a little bit of comparison between some of the front runners and maybe one that a lot of people are sleeping on. We'll go through some various stats and do a little bit of comparison of what they look like in game, at range, and how this will impact your overall gun. The first one we're going to take a look at is the iron sights. You can kind of get a good visual on how this is and how it looks when you're shooting at someone approximately 75 meters away, which is a pretty good challenging range for Warzone. And then we're going to compare that to the Aim Op V4, and you can go ahead and see how it kind of looks at range with and without smoke. And the smoke's particularly important because we're becoming a thermal optic today that is pretty interesting because it has a little bit of a toggle feature. As soon as the target goes into the smoke, they essentially disappear, and the smokes have become part of the meta because it allows you to reposition yourself, especially with the fast TTK. That transition us into the SZ Hollow Therm. What you're going to see here is kind of how that works with the toggle feature. You can turn that on and off, and then as soon as they go into the smoke, you turn it on, so you don't need it on at all times. And once they get into smoke, you go ahead and toggle it on to be able to see them pretty clear. And next up is the VLK optic, and this is the main optic we use for the majority of all of Warzone 1 for any of the long-range Modern Warfare 2019 weapons. So we saw how they looked in game, and here is how they look in a side-by-side comparison. You can see that the iron sights are roughly the same as the Aim Op V4. Keeping in mind that my visual settings are set to 107 FOV with affected FOV, so that when I zoom in, it doesn't zoom in quite as much. So you can kind of see how that comparison looks for those first two. And then when we get to the SZ Hollow Therm along with the VLK, you can kind of see that the size is almost identical. And the benefit with the SZ Hollow Therm, it doesn't give off any kind of glint, but there's more. And for whatever reason, cold-blooded does not work on this thermal optic. And I'll go ahead and show you an example, but it should work. It says undetectable by AI targeting system and thermal optics. For whatever reason, this one doesn't count as a thermal optic in the game's eyes. And here's an example where I call in a cruise missile, the player does not show up on the screen, and want to confirm that it was working because it wasn't showing them. I'm like, let's find another way to prove that cold-blooded is working. Then immediately after, we go in, look in the smoke, and you still pop up on the thermal. So there's literally no counter. So if you end up late game where people are trying to rotate with smoke, be able to beam them, and there's not going to be anything to stop your vision other than a very solid object. And here's the RPK build in case you want to try it for yourself. The only real difference with this build compared to some of my other builds is you can actually swap out the rear grip for a laser depending on what ranges you're going to challenge people. This is literally the no recoil build as we saw there, even with iron sights taking people on at 80 meters. But if you want a little bit faster aim down sight, you can do that by putting on a laser that'll speed that up. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.